It is really a great treat for lunch today. We have a wonderful conversation to highlight. This wasn't on your schedule exactly right. We want to make sure you understand that we have a conversation between Mr. Halverson, who you well know, and Ms. Meg Whitman from HP Enterprise, which I'll have an opportunity to introduce. Please have a seat. It is now my pleasure, since I've had already an opportunity to introduce Mr. Halverson, to now introduce Ms. Whitman, President and CEO of Hewlett Packard Enterprise. Ms. Whitman previously served as President and CEO for Hewlett Packard Company from 2011 to 2015, as well as Chair of the Board from 2014 to 2015, leading the company's turnaround and subsequent separation into two companies, Hewlett Packard Enterprise and HP Incorporated. In addition to serving as President and CEO of Hewlett Packard Enterprise, she currently is the Chairman of the Board for HP Incorporated. From 1998 to 2008, she served as President and CEO of eBay, where she oversaw its growth from 30 employees, and $4 million in annual revenue to more than 15,000 employees and $8 billion in annual revenue. She holds a bachelor's degree from Princeton and an MBA from Harvard, and serves on the boards of directors for both the Procter & Gamble Company and SurveyMonkey. Please join me in welcoming both Mr. Terry Halverson and Ms. Meg Whitman to our stage.
So thank you all, Meg. Thank you for being with me here today. Before we start the conversation, I want to address a question that's come up, like, why are Meg and I on this stage together? And there is some angst, I think, out there in both maybe my world and Meg's about why we're on the stage together. For those of you who heard my opening comments, this is about us being able to have a better dialogue, and it is a dialogue with our industry partners. So why am I here and why is Meg here? Because we are bound in our customer relationship. We are, if not the biggest customer for HP, we're right there. Why wouldn't we have a conversation together? And more importantly, why wouldn't all of you want us to do that in a transparent way in front of you as we ask about and have a dialogue on topics that all of us are facing challenges on? And I'm going to say this up front, and people want to say it's an endorsement of Meg, I don't care. One of the things that happened since Meg took company is we've been having those dialogues. They're not always fun. I will say sometimes they're more lively and entertaining than we might get to today. But they have to happen. We want them to happen. And she has been in forefront of industry of helping that change, that culture happen. So that's what we're going to do today. Meg, any comments you want to start with?
No, well, first of all, thank you very much for having me here. It's a real honor and a privilege I probably know more about the government than most CEOs of IT companies firsthand, because many of you may know I ran for governor of California. Unsuccessfully. However, it really gave me an appreciation of what state, local, and the federal government do to enable the success of the United States of America. So I'm just honored to be here, and thank you for everything that you do for our country.
Okay, well, let's jump into some fun questions. So
okay.
We alluded in the announcement, you've split HP up.
Yes.
As one of your biggest customers, we're certainly concerned about how that. So why did you do it? What do you think the benefits are? And if you don't mind, what do you think are some of the challenges that both you and your customers will face because of that?
Yeah. So as you probably know, HP is an American and global iconic company. When I joined the company 4.5 years ago, we had 325,000 employees, 80,000 contractors, 7 lines of businesses, operating in 170 countries, selling direct to customers as well as through 250,000 value-added resellers. You take that scale and complexity and you lay it against what's happening in the IT industry, which is I've never seen the IT industry change as fast as it has changed in the last 5 years. The advancement of technology is unlike anything I've seen in my career. Our industry does this every 10 to 15 years. You can think the mainframe to the client-server environment, client-server to Web 1.0, Web 1.0 to mobility and web services. We're on the cusp of as radical a change as I have seen. And my view is the future for every organization is going to belong to the fast. And we had to get smaller to go faster for you. So what our customers should see, and the separation, by the way, is done. We announced it in October of 2014. We completed it in November 1st or November 2nd of 2015. So we've been operating as two independent, separate companies for nearly 6 months. So it is HP Inc., our printer and PC company, and then our enterprise solutions business, which is our server, storage, networking, converged infrastructure, software, and services business. And what our customers are already telling me they're seeing is more agility, faster time to market, faster rev on the cycles of R&D, and a lot more focus. And what I'll tell you is, I can see it in myself, because I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Hewlett Packard Enterprise, and I can see it. I went from running 7 businesses to running 4. I can go much deeper and peel apart the granularity of our business in a way I could not. And I suspect for the organizations that you work for, that ability to get granular, to get into the detail, is more important today than it has been. So faster, better cycles, better development, and a more intimate customer relationship.
So I'll press a little more. We talked a little bit about what you're doing external.
Yeah.
You are, and similar to DoD, a fairly large company.
Yes.
Probably just like DoD, internally run just like a switch watch, no disagreements, whatever, no comms problems. But if you had those.
If I had those.
Yeah, how do you see this working through that?
So it was, I think, in many ways, a shock for our company when I announced to the broad population that we were going to separate into 2 companies. And there was a lot of discussion, what's that going to mean for customers? How are we possibly going to do this? Because the complexity of this separation, I mean, I'll just give you a few statistics here. We did it in over just 9.5 months from announced to when we had to operate as 2 separate companies. We built over 6,000 new servers, re-IP'd over 30,000, transitioned close to 400,000 email accounts and more than 100,000 SharePoint sites. It took 41 days to design, 69 to build, 104 to test, and 67 to go live. And actually, no one thought we were going to be able to do this. So that ability to, and this is when you're really glad you run an engineering company, because we basically said we have a drop-dead date and we have to work backwards. So we try to create a culture where there is a lot of dissent and disagreement, but then ultimately a decision has to get made, and then we have to execute. And that's the way we've tried to run the company, which is debate. We want to make sure we get as close to the right answer, but we got to make a decision, and then we have to go execute. And that's what we did here. And I think virtually every employee would say this was the right thing to do, and I think customers think that as well. There's an expression in politics: when you are explaining, you are losing. And we don't have to explain this much, because people sort of go, I get that PCs and printers are different, a different business than our server, storage, networking, services business. Different costs, different competitors, different challenges.
Okay. Cloud, big buzzword today, and I'll be honest, when I first think of cloud, HP does not leap to the top of the list. What do you see is the HP position in cloud? How are you going to support that, and where do you see it going?
So cloud is one of the words in our industry that has a different meaning to probably everyone in this business. Often when people say cloud, what they are talking about is public cloud. Amazon Web Services, Google, Azure. And what the public cloud is a multi-tenancy environment that is run by those companies, and they are building capabilities in compute, storage, networking in that public cloud, where companies go and pull down the compute, the storage, the networking, and the functionality to use in their environment. But actually, I believe we live in a hybrid environment. And you have to think about the workloads and the applications that you run. What applications must be locked down in your data center, untouched by only your agencies or your branch of the government's people? That is traditional data center, and there are many, many apps that are going to live in a traditional data center for many years because they are either mission critical, it's too expensive to migrate them, or it's too risky to take them out of a data center. But then there are some applications you might want to run on your premises in a private cloud. And you get lots of benefit from that. It can be a 10 to 20% cost decrease to host an application in a private cloud because the total cost of ownership is less, you have better utilization of the assets. And then there may be applications you're willing to run in a virtual private cloud or a managed private cloud. And virtually every large organization that we work with, government or business, have a hybrid strategy. Virtually no one, except for if you were starting a new company, would go immediately to a public cloud. So we are the leader in private cloud. We are among the leaders in virtual private cloud and managed private cloud, and we partner actually now with Azure for the public cloud. So often our customers will span all those different cloud environments, and what you have to do is link that together with one single pane of glass so you can manage and orchestrate and automate a multi-cloud environment. This is the biggest difference from what I thought would happen 5 years ago. I thought most environments would pick a cloud vendor, Azure, Hewlett Packard, Cisco, whatever. Most companies, most organizations now are working in a multi-cloud environment, and you've got to be able to orchestrate and monitor. And we have one of the best orchestration and monitoring suites available.
So that means you've got a partner a little bit just like we are.
Absolutely.
Within industry.
Yes.
How you doing that? Because you've got to partner now with, let's be real, some partners that maybe weren't on your list of partners before.
And some partners who compete with us.
Correct. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So the good news about the DNA of the Hewlett Packard company is we are a partnering organization. We're used to operating in heterogeneous environments. And if you think back over the years, we've had tremendous partnerships with SAP. SAP runs on HP gear. We've had tremendous partnerships with Oracle. We've had tremendous partnerships with Microsoft. But we are rebooting those partnerships now to think through, often we cannot be the only solve, and that we have to partner. And one of the things that we probably want to talk about is how we're handling these enormous deployments of Office 365, working very, very closely with Microsoft.
I'm going to go a little off script because I think you've opened a good topic for us. You just named some of the same partners I'm with, but
Yes.
one of the things that DoD struggles with, and frankly gets complaints about, and I think you must too, you just named the big companies. How are you partnering with some of the mid-size and up-and-coming companies to bring them into this environment?
So it's very interesting. We are creating a strategy for Hewlett Packard Enterprise around 4 transformation areas. In other words, what are the 4 business outcomes or mission outcomes that we could help you drive? First is, how do you transform your environment to a hybrid IT infrastructure? Just what I talked about in terms of various cloud landing places for different applications. How do you modernize the infrastructure? How do you create a new development organization? The second is, how do you secure digital assets? Security, we were just talking at lunch about the incredible challenge that increases daily around securing the assets for most organizations. How do you empower a data-driven organization? How do you take all this data and use it? First of all, how do you compute it, but use it for better performance? And then finally, how do you enable workplace productivity? Workplace productivity is a big challenge for everyone. I don't know about most of you, but our 20-somethings have a very different idea of what they want from the workplace than our 50-somethings. This digital divide is as big as I have ever seen it on an age and experience basis. So we have some solutions in our shop for each of those transformation areas, but we are utilizing our position in Silicon Valley to find the new up-and-coming companies that are making a big difference in what I would call new stack, in terms of the new style of IT. And we're trying to find those companies and curate them for government and industry. Because some of these new companies are completely fascinating, whether it's Chef or Puppet or Mesosphere, the list goes on and on. But they don't necessarily have the scale for big deployment. Are they secure? Who's going to service them? Can they deploy in 120 countries in some pretty tough environments? So our objective is we want to partner with a handful of these customers that fit into those 4 transformation areas, make an investment in the company, and then integrate them into the solution area. And so this is a big change for Hewlett Packard because we're used to selling what we own. However, my view is we cannot buy everything. We can't invent everything. But we live in a crucible of innovation in Silicon Valley. So if we can partner, then it gives us degrees of flexibility. Now, someone said to me the other day, Meg, but if you pick one of these companies, you could end up really making a company go from 5 million to 50 million to 500 million, and you won't own it. And I said, and they said, don't you feel bad about that? And I said, no, I feel great about that, because it means we have created a solution where they have plugged in that is of value to someone like the DoD. So the other benefit for us is there is a new security company being born in Silicon Valley about once a week. And most of the CIOs I talk to, I'd be curious on your view, is that's all great. What am I supposed to do with all these security companies? And so if we make investments in a few, and then 6 months later a better one comes along, I have not just spent $300 million to buy a security company that I then wish I didn't own. So it's a different working model. It's flexible, it's agile, and it's requiring some cultural change on our part. But it's the right thing for customers.
Yeah, I think that's a cultural change for all of us. And it is going to be a little bit different way we think about how we reach the smaller and the innovative companies. And I do think, because I do think most people operate on things within our best interest. That's in what I think we ought to say. That's in your best business interest. It's in my best business and defense interest. So I think there are some areas where that commonality helps us get to places.
And it helps that we are in Silicon Valley. You know, we're just living it, we're breathing it, we're seeing it every day. And I think it's easier when you are geographically co-located with many of these innovative companies.
Okay. Software-defined everything,
Yes.
and anything is a service.
Yep.
Where are you at?
So there is no question that this is a real trend in the industry for very good reasons, because it is cheaper and the development cycles are much smaller. And I will divide as a service into two pieces. First, there is software as a service. So in the old days, and you know this, if you had an HR system, it was you would get a release once every 18 months, maybe once every 2 years. And there would be an upgrade that you would then have to put into your environment. But you ran that software package on your hardware in your data center. You maintained the hardware, you maintained the application, you patched the application. What is now happening is for many applications, whether it's Salesforce.com in a Salesforce application, Workday in a human resources application, DocuSign in document signing and things, what happens is those applications live in a cloud at Salesforce.com. You have no data. You have no data center for that. And the application comes whenever they release, which can be every other day, once a week, twice a week, et cetera. That is much more cost effective for us and much lighter weight from an asset perspective. So that's one, software as a service. Then you asked a question about software-defined data center. So there's no question that we are living in a world where software is defining how these data centers work. And think about it, software-defined networking, software-defined storage, and infrastructure as a service. And there's two interesting things here. One is, in this case, the actual technology that delivers a software-defined data center. But the other thing, there is as much business model innovation going on as there is technology innovation, because what the cloud taught us is that you don't have to buy infrastructure and a capital expenditure. You can buy it as an operating expense, and you can utilize that compute capacity that can be in your data center on-prem, totally controlled by you, but you can pay for it as if it was cloud. You can pay for it on an as-needed basis. I'll give you the perfect example. At eBay, we didn't do it this way because cloud was not available, and this kind of pricing was not available. But we had to build our infrastructure for peak capacity, which was the holiday season. We had to build, I like to say, the church for Easter Sunday. The good news is we finally figured out how to have the church big enough for Easter Sunday after a lot of struggles. The bad news was our year-round data center utilization was like 17%. And today, you wouldn't do it that way. You would either work with someone like a Hewlett Packard Enterprise or other companies, and you would have that application hosted in your data center, but you would pay for it as you used the compute, or you would burst to the cloud for that peak data center usage.
The Internet of Everything is everywhere.
So this is a whole new trend as well. And you see it, I'm sure, in your environments. There is tremendous data coming from what I call the edge, whether it is the engines on the airplane, sensors in the hospital bed, machine learning, self-driving cars. And what is happening is that in the early days of Internet of Things, all that data would be brought back to a data center and processed, and then you would get the insights and you'd figure out what to do. But now what we see happening is compute, storage, networking is moving to the edge. And I'll give you a perfect example. How many of you have ever been in a self-driving car, an autonomous vehicle? It's a scary thing, actually. I did it just the other week in Germany, and I had a driver just in case things didn't go that well. But think about, what is a self-driving car? It is taking data in real time. Is that car next to me moving or fixed? Is that tree a person or a fixed object? And they're real-time processing this data to make the decisions about what the car does. And it was amazing to me because you could see actually the ingestion of that data and then the car interpreting that data and doing what it needed to do. At the end of the ride, the fellow who was with me opened the trunk of the car, and in the trunk of the car effectively was a baby data center that was processing data at the edge, making decisions real time. Increasingly, we are seeing compute, storage, networking at the edge because you can't have the latency come back to a data center to make those decisions. So many companies, including ourselves, are creating, this is sort of a non-technical term, but baby data centers that have very low power. Because if you are in the back of a car as a baby data center, you've got to have very low power because you've got to be able to drive. It has to have tremendous storage, and it has to have real-time processing power. And so it's a different kind of compute. So I think this is a really interesting area. Lots of early-stage R&D here, but I believe that compute, storage, networking is going to move to the edge as opposed to sort of in fixed big data centers.
You're involved in a project that we are watching closely at DoD with the MOD,
yes.
UK MOD, and a few other small partners,
yes.
and a few larger partners to move them to an on-prem, really the first time government Office 365 environment.
Yeah.
How's it going? What have been some of the challenges? And talk about some of the challenges about how those partnerships work.
Well, you know, Terry is leading a really interesting collaboration with the Ministry of Defense in the UK with his counterpart, who's a fellow by the name of Mike Stone. And Mike is pioneering the single largest deployment of Office 365 that has ever been done. It is over 425,000 seats in various countries in some quite challenging environments. And I think everyone in the audience knows what Office 365 is. Remember, I described software as a service. Office 365 is basically Microsoft Office, only as a service, where the updates are real time. So again, it's not like you get an update of Office 365 every 9 months. You can be getting an Office. It's an evergreen, updated situation. And deploying at this scale is reasonably challenging, because it's never been done before. And so Microsoft has a role, we have a role. Some of the parts of Office 365 are being finished at the same time, or just about the same time that they need to go into deployment. And so it takes a very tight partnership between the Ministry of Defense and their engineers, HP, Hewlett Packard Enterprise, and Microsoft. And it is truly a seamless team. You cannot figure out who's Microsoft, who's MOD, and who is Hewlett Packard Enterprise. And the interdependency is unlike anything I've ever seen. So it's a little scary, honestly, but we are a little late, but I believe we will deploy in the new schedule in May. And I think one of the things that I did want to mention is this notion of the current authority to operate procedures that exist in the military is different. And it is not necessarily completely congruent with this next generation of technology of software as a service. So that's another thing that we're trying to work through. But it's a very bold project. It will, to talk about business outcomes, it will be lower cost, much better capability across the globe with much, much faster updates that will be, I think, of real benefit to the MOD. So we're super excited about this, and I know you've been very close to it. And I have to say, Mike Stone has done a good job. He, not only are our teams inseparable, he has formed a team of me, Satya Nadella, and himself. and we're like the little steering committee for this. And I think he's got my cell phone number and Satya Nadella, who's the CEO of Microsoft's cell phone on speed dial. And we do exactly what Mike says.
That's a bit of a culture change inside HP.
Yes.
How have you dealt with that? What would have been your challenges
Yeah.
with again, you're like
Yeah.
us, you're big.
So, as I said, we're used to working with partners, but when you're on a tight time frame where you are, I like to say we're breaking new snow. This has never been done before at this scale. And so what happens in organizations, and you probably never see this, I bet you see it a lot, which is there is a little bit of, it's the other guy's fault.
We never see that.
If they would just do what they said they were going to do, then we'd be fine. And so there was a little bit of their fault, we would be fine if it wasn't for them. Among all three of us, right? Because the MOD has a huge role to play here. I mean, the MOD personnel in charge of this is their very best and brightest. And we had to actually stop that. We had to say, listen, we cannot be fighting with each other. We have got to figure out how we're going to run a project management office with deliverables and deadlines will slip in this environment because we are doing new things. Okay, so then how do you quite quickly reboot and make it work? And I think it is, you know what it is, and this will sound somewhat simplistic, it is all about trust. It is all about trust. I've got to trust.
Now, I just have to ask you, did we talk before this meeting?
No,
Did we compare notes?
no,
Prepped in any way?
no.
I just will draw attention to what we talked about earlier this morning, and what was the key word? This is not rehearsed.
No, it's
Nothing
actually
done.
not. It's not.
I just will point that out.
Yeah. No, it is about trust, and it's about, okay, if something doesn't quite go as MOD told us it would, or Microsoft told us it would, or we told them, then how do we regroup as a team? This is a team. If we are to win here, then we're going to win as a team. And so it's been actually a very good experience, and we're privileged to be part of it. And I think once we do this, listen, we can do it for other big installations, whether it's in government or in business.
Okay, we've put you on the spot a little bit today.
Yeah.
What should government be doing to better enable this partnership?
So I would say, I think there's a number of things that business and government can do together. But it is going to require, I think, cultural change on the part of ourselves and government. And then it's going to, I think, require some changes in how the government does business. But let me give you a bit of context. What is happening in technology is things are moving really rapidly, much more rapidly than I have ever seen. And we're doing things that haven't been done before. Just this notion of hybrid cloud has never been done before. And so when you're developing a cloud solution, as we are, you're changing your mind. When we work with customers, they're changing their mind real time on what they might want to do as more data and more technology becomes available. So the way we have traditionally worked with customers and government is we set out a program that may be scheduled to run 10 years, and then we basically execute. That is the opposite of an agile relationship. And I think it keeps innovation from getting to government as fast as it should. So I would recommend two things. In the context of contracts that you have with companies like ours, how can you keep the contract but let the nature of that relationship and the technology choices happen faster? The problem is often these contracts feel like straitjackets to us. They feel like straitjackets to your people. And we've got to be able to do more we've got to have an agile relationship. We've got to have agile solutioning because the world is moving too fast. If we wait for a 5-year window, we will have missed a big technology trend which will have accelerated the mission. The second thing that I think government needs to do, and I suspect there's some things we could do on the Hill around this, is the procurement and acquisition of technology. The policies, the way this is done, is actually not benefiting the government. It is too structured. It doesn't leave room for innovation. Everything is done down to from almost a reverse auction in a way that is counter to what is happening in technology. And so I would just encourage you, and we will try to do our part. I think we've got to change the way procurement is done. I think that the government is losing out on the very best of industry because of a quite well, it worked beautifully 10 years ago, but the world has changed. And so I would be very thoughtful about how one can change the procurement process to allow for agility. And then the last thing I think is public-private partnerships. And I was talking to Lieutenant Bill Bender about this at lunch, which is think about what you need in terms of personnel. Cybersecurity is the #1 issue for virtually every one of you. You have trouble getting enough cybersecurity young talent into your agencies. By the way, there isn't enough cybersecurity talent probably in the country. So, but we have the ability to train and develop huge numbers of security analysts, and we hire from universities around the United States. This year, Hewlett Packard will hire 8,000 early career hires from undergraduate and PhD programs. We would be quite keen to set up an exchange. You know, in other words, we train, 1,000 kids a year in this. Maybe 20 of them should go spend time at the DoD for 3 years with a return ticket if they want to come back. But this generation of technologists, they are a little different, I think, in terms of what they're looking for. This generation wants impact. They want to make a difference. They care a lot about their employer's mission. And I think they would be privileged to spend 3 years in the service of the United States. And so those are the kinds of things that we do a little bit of today, but frankly, I think we're going to have to do a lot more because we can hire, train, perhaps faster than the government, and then they can get great experience, and then they can stay if that's the mission they want to be on, or they could come back. And then your part has to be to get them clearance, which really takes a long time, a really long time. And that might be one last thing I'd say. Is there a way to get these high security clearances done faster? Listen, I understand the penalty for getting it wrong. I understand the penalty for missing, an individual, but I think that could really be a helpful way we could work together.
We're involved a little bit in hoping that gets better. Where's Al? Al, Lynn, pay attention here. We're giving you another tasking. We're looking at that, as you know, as a result of the OPM. Al here has the lead to help us rebuild that IT system, and we're actually looking with the Intel community how that whole process could change. You brought up, though, in that list about some partnerships with industry and government at the people level.
Yep.
How important do you think that be, and do you think that translates maybe to a different career path for people in IT and cyber?
I do actually. I think, again, if you think of the trends that you know well and that we've highlighted here, if you come back down to one thing, it is fast. I promise you the future belongs to the fast here. If we don't move faster, if government doesn't move faster, I think in 10 years we are going to have fallen behind other countries and companies in other countries. So think about that. And what that means is we not only have to do agile development, which is how we write new software and how we write cloud-native applications. How do we hire our people? How do we get them up to speed faster? How do we integrate them into our organization where we can move the good people faster? How do we partner in such a way that we can do things better and more nimbly with you? Because it's what I said before, the days are over of a 10-year contract. You have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and nothing changes in between. We still do contracts like that, and it is not in your interests, and frankly, it's not in ours, because the customers in year 7 go, well, you haven't brought me anything new. Well, the reason we haven't brought you anything new is we're all living in a straitjacket. And I don't think that's actually necessary, even within the construct of these contracts. We've got to be more nimble. So I think there are really different career paths here. There are career paths of moving between organizations, of government to business, of business to government. I also think there's, and we do a lot of this with the government, high-performance compute. We've got a lot of joint-owned R&D programs with the government about high-performance compute, and this is a really important area for the United States of America. And then if you think about the next generation of compute, we've been doing compute for the same way basically for 40 years. It's a processor-centric compute. My belief is with the escalation of data and the power requirements, we are building data centers at an enormous rate across the globe here. What will be built this year in terms of data center would run the length of Manhattan 10 times. So think about the power, the space. We can't keep building data centers like this. So how do we have much lower power, much smaller space that will allow us to compute the data that is coming on? So I think when we're doing quite some interesting things there. So we're quite game to partner with certain agencies, with certain parts of agencies to basically say, how do we do things differently? You know, maybe we do more greenfields projects together, and where I'll say to you, be very clear, we don't actually know how to do this. And so we're going to have a joint development project here, and we will figure it out together. And that will benefit us, because if we can figure it out with an organization as complex as yours, we can probably figure it out for almost anyone. So,
Meg, thank you. I see they're waiting in the wings to tell us it's time to get off the stage. But thanks for sharing the dialogue. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. It's a real privilege to be here.
Thank you. Very well done.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Very appreciated. Thank you very much. Our thanks to Mr. Terry Halverson and Ms. Meg Whitman from HP for a remarkable conversation on, frankly, the nature of our business and as it advances some of the questions. Ladies and gentlemen, that is our conclusion of the luncheon, but I would like to point out several things to you. Our exhibit floor is, again, open to you, and I ask that you visit those exhibitors out there and their solutions. I think we've been given some good charge, some good mission, and from our speakers today, some good questions that go get answered. Our next panel is at 2:45. It'll be the Services CIO panel in here at 2:45. Congratulations again to our Copernicus winners, and thank you all for being here for lunch.